up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Jason of Bullet for My Valentine. Thanks for being here today, man.
Pleasure, man. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, great to officially meet you as well. Thank you for giving us some new music to end this year on a high note with, because we got the self-titled album coming out this November. Did you just consider this the appropriate follow-up to Gravity? Does it feel like you're picking up where you left off after that, or was being that this is a self-titled album? I've always noticed that when a band puts out a self-titled album in the middle of their catalog, it usually represents some sort of change. Is this like a new era for Bullet for My Valentine in a way?
Yeah, it definitely feels like a new era for sure. It was kind of a natural progression from Gravity because Gravity divided critics and fans, but it actually provided the best touring cycle we've ever had. And at the time, we experimented because I think we felt cornered by our own sound, and we did try and go heavy on the last album, but it just wasn't to be, and we did Gravity, we experimented, and that's kind of allowed us to go into a more aggressive direction with the new album. Like, as you say, the self-titled nature of it is probably a lot of pride, and the fact that we're all aligned, it's just a collective of our tastes in heavy music.
Definitely. And I feel like that's a good represent. Is it fair to say that Knives and Shatter, the first two singles, are maybe a good representation of that? Because these are pretty relentless singles. I mean, this is some of the heaviest stuff I've heard since Scream, Aim, and Fire. So,
Yeah, it sure is. It's, there's still some heavy stuff to come off the album. The beauty of it is, I would pick all 10 songs as singles, because they're all so different, and they're all relentless and intense in their own kind of way. There's another like 5 bangers on the album in terms of speed and pure aggression. But Knives is a great representation actually, because it's got a lot of ingredients to it. So yeah, Shatters shows a different side, more industrial, dirty side. But I think dirt is the key word. It's a definitely dirty Bullet sound.
yeah, it's very raw, I've noticed. Like, it feels like that there's nothing to hide with it. And was this always like the intention? Was this a preconceived idea? Like, even before you started making this album, like, let's go in a heavier direction? Or did it kind of just like happen that way through experimentation and like rolling the dice?
You know what? I think when we started writing, oh my word, when was that? That was like summer of 2019, I think. Knives was one of the first songs we wrote, and we were just feeling the vibe, the dirty, heavy vibe. And I've always championed for a more raw sound for Bullet, because I've always felt that it's, for my taste anyway, a bit too clinical. And clinical quite often happens in production when you haven't got good players in the band, because everything gets fixed and tidied up nowadays. But in this band, we're all players, we can all play, so there's just no need to have such a tidy production. So we just wanted something just a bit filthy and like you say, raw, that really knits well with the type of songs we've got.
Definitely. Being that Gravity was your first album with the band, so like when you joined Bullet for My Valentine, were you looking at albums such as Venom or Scream, Aim, and Fire or Fever, being like, okay, this is how I have to play, or were you like allowed to bring a little bit of your own mix into Bullet?
I really wanted to bring my own sound to it, because at that point I think that Gravity was the band's sixth, seventh album. I should know, but I can't remember. And I just thought this is my chance to inject something new into the band. Obviously, the guys had to be willing, and I think Piece of Me is a good influence from myself, and very much in that sort of groove area of drumming. It's got an urban an almost urban dancey feel to the groove. And I wanted to get busy with songs like Don't Need You. It's quite strange, I brought my own sound to Gravity, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to show a bit more. But because it was more of a song-based album with electronic sounds, it's a case of being mature about drum parts. Yeah, I mean, the new album, I've let rip on that, so I'm satisfied.
The first thing I noticed on this was the drums. I was like, man, I was like, I thought your drum set was like a bad person in a previous life or something like that.
Well, I'm a normal guy. At home, I've got my three kids, my wife. I go running. I like nature. I don't really listen to heavy music, but put me behind a kit, and you might want to arrest me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. When I saw you at Irving Plaza in 2018, that was a great tour, and I was watching from like the balcony area, the VIP, so I kind of had like a good aerial view over your kit. I don't think the cymbals
Amazing.
were barely visible that night just because you kept hitting them and they kept flying. Uh, pretty impressive work there.
Well, thank you very much. It's just, I think when you're on tour, for me, you've got to make the most of every second you're on stage. And the last 18 months has taught us that, and sort of shown us that we've actually got one of the coolest jobs in the world. It's just, you've got to make the most of every second you play.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me asking, when you do play like older stuff, like songs like Your Betrayal or songs like Scream, Aim, and Fire or Tears Don't Fall, for example, do you maybe have like a different attachment to that song? Because I was able to acknowledge the fact that you're really into when you play, like you're in there and you're in a completely different zone. But like when you are playing older material, does it almost feel like maybe a different type of attachment or like maybe a different technique even?
I kind of, the older stuff, I try and keep it true to how it was, because I know that annoys fans if things get changed, even from a drummer's point of view. But I mean, what's apparent to me is, Tears Don't Fall for instance, has got such a powerful connection to the crowd. And yeah, I mean, I'm in that zone, when we play that, and appreciate it's a heritage song for Bullet, and it's always going to be in the set. So yeah, I try and keep things as they were, and I don't mess with things too much in that sense.
Fair enough. And as a drummer, there's the famous saying, your drummer sucks, your band sucks. The goal is to keep everything together. Do you prefer to have music before you lay down any drum patterns? Or do you like to has there ever been a time in either Bullet from a Valentine or your other projects where like you had a whole drum pattern laid down and that maybe influenced the whole song?
Well, yeah, Matt and myself, we had a side project called Axe Wound back in 2012, I think, and it was a brutal project. And it basically involved Matt saying to me, okay, play some drums for 3 minutes and I'll write some riffs around it. And the whole album was recorded like that. We recorded it in 2 weeks, and wrote a song a day. It was really intense. So, I'd jam all day, grooves and stuff, and Matt would riff to them. And then it'd be like at the end of the day, okay, now lay the drums down properly for a take. And of course I was exhausted, but it was good. It was such a raw, honest project. I think with Bullet, it's the riffs kind of dictate where the drums are going to go, and I kind of embellish them with my style. And most of the time, a bridge section in our songs is influenced by a drum composition. So the guys will say, hey, Jace, give us some bold for this middle bit. And I go, okay, right. And I just play something crazy for a middle section, and then that's how unusual sections are born, particularly on the new album. There's a song, Over It, on the last album that featured a middle section where Matt said, oh, can you just play something crazy? I'm stuck for this part. Like, sure, okay. I just made up something crazy, and that was it.
Like, part of me wonders this because I feel like, and I'm not trying to undermine guitars or basses or vocals, but like there's a melody that you could fixate in your head to the point where it's like, very memory oriented. But like with drums, every millisecond of the song, you're hitting something different. Are you memorizing exactly how it was recorded on the album and then bringing that live, or do you kind of maybe change things up on the live presence as opposed to the recording?
I for the most part, I like to know where I'm going live, because I mean, when you're playing festivals in front of 60,000, 100,000 people, if you start messing around on the kit and going, oh, I'm going to improvise here, I've done it before. And then you get a moment where you're like, oh, wow, where am I in the song? Because you've got carried away. You're looking at the crowd, you're free forming. And it's like, oh my God, where am I? Is this the second verse?
Well, you're
So
lucky.
I've learned,
Yeah, you're lucky though, because you have all the drum hardware to hide behind. If you mess up the song, I think poor Matt's gonna be the one to take the brunt of it.
yeah, but you know what? When you're a drummer, it's a bit like being a goalkeeper in a soccer team, because people expect you to not let any goals in, and you only get criticised when you let a goal in.
What?
People expect you to make saves, and it's a bit like being a drummer. If you make one little mistake, everyone's like, "What was that?" It's like,
Yeah.
relax, guys. Sticks break. I had to pick up a stick. You missed a cymbal. 5 seconds. Don't worry about it. The
Yeah.
beat's still going.
Exactly. You break a stick, you could at least pick up another one. Imagine breaking a string in the middle of a guitar solo, and that's gonna suck.
That's gonna suck. I wouldn't want to be a lead guitarist for that reason.
Exactly, exactly. Now, you are a very prolific artist and have played with multiple bands outside of Bullet for My Valentine. You mentioned the side project that you did with Matt, but you've also had projects such as Pitch Shifter, This Is Menace, Axe Wounds, as you mentioned before, so many other bands. Like, is it a different mindset depending on the projects that you've played with, or is there a usual method behind the madness that applies to everything? Just focusing on keeping the rhythm and keeping the beat.
Well, I thought there was a method to the madness for every band because, as you say, I've done a lot of work with different bands, but that all changed when I started drumming with Killing Joke, which are like a old school punk band, and they are completely nuts. Most bands I've played, and I've played to a click, but that band, it was like the singer kind of altered the structure of the songs on stage. I was like, where are we going? This is still the verse. And he'd go to sing, and then he'd go, we're going to hang on this groove a bit more in the verse. I was like, oh my God, what is going on, And they'd all look at me and they'd scowl at me like old punks. And it kind of gave me a bit of fear. But I learned a lot from playing in that band. They've got such an enormous amount of heritage, and they're so admired by a lot of people. It was a nuts time to be drumming with them, and quite scary at times as well, because they quite often fight on stage and throw things.
Yeah.
But it was kind of fun in some ways.
Killing Joke played. Did you play at the Secret Show at St. Vitus? Were you on that tour or?
Oh wow, I don't think so. On and off, I was playing with them from around 2013 to 2015, 2016.
Okay, yeah, this was 2019, so you were well into Bullet at that point.
Yeah. But I mean, Bullet is like, it suits me. I mean, it's nice to have found a band that's home, because I've been floating around in so many different bands, before Bullet, and now Bullet's a home, and I love everyone involved, and it's kind of, metal was my first love when I started drumming, and now I'm kind of back to doing that.
Yeah.
So it's all cool.
And Bullet for My Valentine, what I've always liked is that it's always a great vibe. Like, so far, the only time I've seen Bullet was at that Irving Plaza show. But like, I love your record label, Spine Farm. Huge shout out to them. They're great people. You have you have a great fans as well. I feel like the people behind Bullet for My Valentine are just as good as the people in Bullet for My Valentine.
Yeah, well, thank you. It is. It makes me happy that you say that, because from my point of view, they're the band, the guys, they're three of the most normal people I've ever worked with in a band, which is rare, for a band with so much success. And the whole team's awesome. Like you say, Spine Farm, our management genuinely care for the band and have nurtured the band since, it was basically born. So yeah, it's we're lucky to have such a solid team. I hear so many horror stories of other bands and how things go wrong, and we just got to keep it nurtured and keep positive and keep playing.
Definitely. The next question I have is going back to songwriting. I mentioned this to Dirk from Megadeth. We're not going to talk a little smack, but let's say the rest of the band writes a whole chord progression, writes a whole song, and then they present it to you to lay down the drums. You can be honest. How off time is it sometimes?
How off?
How off time? Yeah.
It never normally is. That's the thing.
Really?
I mean, in terms of timing, it's pretty bang on. Matt's right hand on his guitar is frightening. It's kind of like my feet. It's like his hand stuck to my feet. His timing is so great, and there's never usually any issues like that.
Oh wow, really? I heard
Yeah.
I've heard some horror stories like, oh, I wrote this really cool chord progression and it's like 1 minute. It's like, okay, it's 2 beats per minute, then it's like 500 beats per minute. Like it's like so off time and whatever, and then the drummer is like almost kind of like
Yeah.
super gluing everything together to fit.
Well, some of the best bands are those bands like Pantera, where they didn't play to a click.
Yeah.
But you listen to Vulgar Display, and the songs just move. They stretch. The timing stretches. It's insane. But that's what makes it so heavy. Everyone sticks together, and everyone's on elastic in terms
Yeah.
of speeding up and slowing down. And Faith No More are like that as well. Like when I watch them, Mike playing a drum fill speeds up, but the whole band speed up with him. They know he's going to do it, and it's an incredible, like, multi-dimensional listening experience where they're warping time and slowing back down for the verse, and they all speed up because they've been playing together for so long.
Yeah.
Obviously, the problem is when the drummer's playing a different tempo, the guitarist is playing a different tempo, and the bass player's playing a different song. That's not good.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, well, isn't that how he got a lot of like experimental post-hardcore? I'm kidding, but
Yeah.
but and you kind of like going back into that, because like when you play, because Bullet for My Valentine has a lot of songs that do vary in tempos, because you have songs that are very thrashy and relentless, but then you also have ballads. So like, is it almost like exerting a different energy?
It is, but we're all on click live. We all use in-ears, and we all play to
Okay.
and the way we write, the way the songs are written, we don't stick to one tempo within the song. So there's the tempo actually changes, the click changes in the song and speeds up, and we all follow that. So we're all stuck together like glue.
Okay. I've noticed that the intro in Tears Don't Fall, that like little picking part at the beginning, part of me wonders, when I first heard that song when I was a young teenager, part of me was thinking that's definitely to set the tempo. I think part of me is wondering if that was left in there by accident. It wasn't just Matt going in with the scream, but like if it was just like dun, 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 like that helped lay down the tempo for it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, because it's to a click anyway. It was always going to have that intro. But I mean, there's times when, like, there's a song. The song Venom has got this like delay effect on the guitar, and it makes the pattern of the guitar work. And I remember losing the click once, and it just sounded nuts in everyone's ears.
Yeah.
Because they were still hearing the click, I wasn't. And there was this awful clash in their ears of the click and the delay guitar gradually going out of time. That was a bit of a horror story.
Yeah. Well, I've always admired how Bullet for My Valentine was able to start off songs in different ways. Like, I love the introduction to You Want a Battle, Here's a War. Like, I think that's just so anthemic and so epic. And then, you have songs that just go right into it and pull no punches. Like, you never know how a Bullet for My Valentine song is going to start, which is what I think makes it so captivating.
Yeah, I think it's the art of putting a live set together is tricky sometimes, but we're lucky we've got songs with different intros and stuff, so we can make a seamless set, so there's not too many stops. And sometimes I'll do a bit of a drum solo, like a mini solo, to go into another song. So you're always trying to bridge the gap and make it flow.
To make this art of drumming conversation kind of like come full circle, is there any similarity in energy into like the recording process as there is when you're playing live? Is there anything that makes them similar, or is it like almost two completely separate entities?
It's exactly the same, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm quite an old school drummer in the fact that I feel ridiculous saying this actually, but when I go into the studio, I'll rehearse the songs like I'm going to play them live. I want them to be a performance, and I want to get the songs down in 3 or 4 takes. so many drummers nowadays, they record a song in sections. And I can understand that if you're writing and recording at the same time. But to me, to get that performance down, this forever solidified on Spotify or on a CD is crucial. That's like energy. That's so valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want the recording to be like how I play it live. That's so important.
And I think with the music, especially with listening to the album, like I feel like this self-titled album, really every song captures just that a moment. So like I feel like if you're working on a song for like, you mentioned you started songwriting in 2019, but I feel like if you're working on a song, and take 13 years to make it, #tool, but like I feel like it can almost like get rid of that moment. It almost kind of deteriorates that moment.
Yeah, definitely. And if you know what you're doing, you can get that performance down. You should get it down within half an hour, really, drum wise, because any more than that, and everything starts to sound forced and contrived. And it's the same with vocals. There's a lot of parallels with vocals and drumming because they're both very physical and both performance based. You can get away with the guitar dropping in and recording things in chunks, but I mean, Mick Jagger, or no, it's Bono actually records in one take. It's like he's playing a show, and it has to be like that.
Definitely. I know this question is kind of cliche, like what are your influences, but like, but like, for me, what always made me gravitate towards music was melody and emotion and lyrical context. And what I've always found so fascinating about drummers, I've interviewed drummers of multiple styles, such as the drummer of Failure, which is more alternative rock, and then I've interviewed death metal drummers, and they really are like so into like how an artist plays and like the gear that they use. For me, and I'm not a drummer, so this could just be me, to me snare sound sounds like a snare sound unless it's Saint Anger, but when you so what were you looking for in a drummer inspiration? Who is your greatest inspiration, and how did it almost kind of like make you gravitate towards it?
Well, it all started really thanks to my brothers. They used to listen to Van Halen. So Alex Van Halen was a very early influence when I was about 10 years old. And then when I got seriously into drumming, the guy that really did it for me was Dave Lombardo. I was absolutely obsessed, and as soon as I heard Slayer, I was like, that's me. I'm going to be that. I want to be like that guy.
Yeah, Dave Lombardo is a genius.
Yeah, he's left-handed on a right-handed kit too, so I can relate to that because I'm similar. And so I used to work out his drum fills, slowing the record down, and obsessed.
Don't you almost have to be kind of like ambidextrous to be a drummer, actually?
Yeah, I think most drummers are, from using both hands. And when you progress, you start wanting to be more creative, and that kind of ends up using hands in different ways you don't normally use them. Another guy I got huge respect for is Josh Freese. He's like the perfect drummer because he's musical and he just does what the song needs, but still manages to add a little flair, almost as if he's saying, hey, I'm here, Josh is here, but I'm keeping this groove steady. And if you go back to Suicidal Tendencies, he drummed on The Art of Rebellion. That's one of the best drum sounds I've ever heard.
Yeah,
and it's an old album now.
That's insane.
But he's done Avril Lavigne. I think he's drummed for Pink, Nine Inch Nails. He's got his band, The Vandals. I love his drumming.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see on how many artists play with different varieties. Like I know that Jason Hook, who used to play guitar for Five Finger Death Punch, he used to play guitar for Hilary Duff. So.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I remember when Hilary Duff blew up when I was like in elementary school, and like then when Five Finger Death Punch blew up like a decade later, I was like, that guitar player looks very familiar. What metal band did I see him in before? Oh, I saw him with Hilary Duff.
That's interesting, because I think musicians who've got a rich history of playing with different people, they turn out to be really nice people because they're open-minded enough and not closed off and insecure. Oh, it's just got to be metal or whatever. And we've done a few shows with Five Finger Death Punch, and they're really nice guys, super nice guys.
Great guys. And that led me to my final question, is because, speaking of diversity, Bullet for My Valentine has always played with a variety of different bands. I mean, from one year, they were opening for Guns N' Roses, and then, you're playing with like a bunch of, Kill Switch Engages, and you brought out Tooth Grinder when I saw you last. Like, have you noticed maybe like a different type of audience? It's fair to say that Bullet for My Valentine has a very diverse audience from age to musical taste.
Yeah, for sure. Gravity actually won us a load of new fans as well, people that hadn't heard the back catalogue. So that was quite interesting. And it gives you hope as well when you're several albums into your career that you can still attract new people who don't just paint you with the metal band brush or whatever. But yeah, sorry, I forgot the question.
No, you were answering it, like playing with a diverse audience, having like a diverse audience, and playing with different bands.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I first played with Bullet back in 2010, I stepped in to play on their arena tour, and I was like shocked at the age range. There were kids there who were probably 10 years old with their elder brothers and sisters and their parents. So it's, across a big age range, the fan base. So it's amazing to see.
Yeah. And have you noticed, do you maybe like adjust the set list if you're like bringing out like a heavier band, if you're going out with like a Kill Switch Engage, or like bringing out like an Unearth or something like that, or even playing with a Hatebreed, you make it a little bit heavier than if you're touring with like a a Volbeat, for example, or something like that?
Yeah, well, you know what we did on the last cycle, because Gravity is a different beast to the other albums, so we were doing that actually. But likewise now, some of the songs off Gravity just won't fit into the new set. And there's also oh man, what's the song called? Bittersweet Memories. We were talking about putting that into the set, but it's such a sort of rock ballad. It's just not going to fit with the brutal new stuff.
I say do it. That's a good way to mess with your audience. And believe me, people who mosh the whole time, they won't admit it, but they're grateful for it. It gives them a chance to catch their breath and be like, okay, instead of moshing, I'll wave my lighter around.
That's it. Well, yeah, they like a bit of a rest. But we've got a few surprises in the set for when we tour in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, and I can tell you, this new album is great, but I'm staying out of that mosh pit when you play those singles, because that's going to be violent.
We'll see about that, Alex.
I'll be getting a beer during that song.
Yeah, sure, man. Sure, yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such a great conversation. Pleasure. Is there just anything else with Bullet for My Valentine you'd like to plug? You mentioned you're heading out for tour soon. I'd imagine when this virus that shall not be named is behind us, can you please bring Bullet for My Valentine back to the States?
Yeah, man. We can't wait to come back to America. We do America a lot on a touring cycle, 3 times, which is more than most other European bands. So we're there for like 3 6-week periods. So we're definitely going to be back next year. So all the American fans out there, watch this space. We can't wait to see you, and we love you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Bullet for My Valentine, self-titled album coming out this November. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.